Hey everyone, it's Richard Metal Fan here, bringing you guys a brand new 2022 album review. It's been a while since I did any album reviews, but I'm going to bring you one today. And as you can see below the title, today we're going to be talking about the new album that came out today from one of my favorite bands since high school, and I'm talking about Slipknot with their new album, The End So Far, this was released today under Roadrunner Records. Now, I don't think I really need to go much into Slipknot. I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of them. Been around since the mid-late 90s from Des Moines, Iowa. And for me, Slipknot were one of those kind of like, a lot of people consider them kind of like gateway bands first getting into metal. And they definitely were one of my favorite bands that I heard back when I was like 13 years old. And like really the first like more kind of like extreme metal bands that would later, as I got older, would get me into like death metal and black metal as I got older. And this album is, of course, the band's seventh full-length album, and this follows up their previous album from 2019, We Are Not Your Kind. And with We Are Not Your Kind going into the end so far, I mean, I think this album is a little bit of a step up from that in terms of like the music-wise. I thought We Are Not Your Kind, initially I thought was pretty good, but over time I just kind of like, eh. But I think this is almost kind of like a return to form for Slipknot when I first heard this. One thing to note, the production produced by Joe Barresi with the band, and of course he also mixed this album. Like, the production's pretty great. I always think Slipknot has really great production, and the performance members from the nine. Let's just start with the vocals from Corey Taylor. I always thought Corey Taylor's voice has definitely evolved since the first album to now. Even when with his other band Stone Sour, I think Corey Taylor's voice has definitely improved from like when he does like the softer kind of like melodic singing to like the yelling, like kind of like harsher vocals. I feel like Corey's voice definitely has evolved. He definitely puts a lot of like emotion and a lot of effort into his singing. The guitar work on this album is tight. Jim Root and Mick Thompson both come up with some really great riffs. The riffing on here is really great. The bass on this album is a little bit audible from V-Man, or Alessandro Venturella. I probably butchered his name. I thought, of course, stepping in the shoes of the late, great Paul Gray, I think V-Man does a really great job handling the bass. The drumming from, of course, Jay Weinberg is freaking great. I definitely think he really felt there's only his third record with the band, replacing Joey Jordison, also rest in peace. I think Jay's drumming on this album is just amazing. And as well as like the percussion from Clown, Sean Crahan, and the new percussion, later their most recent percussionist, Michael Pfaff. I probably butchered his name, but they both come up with some really great drum percussions. The sampling from Craig Jones definitely feels well, and of course, lastly, we got Sid Wilson, their DJ. I think that the DJ scratching is just really adds to some of the songs. Now, of course, Slipknot were kind of labeled as a new metal band because when they debuted, there was some bands that have like turntablists in them in like new metal bands in like the late 90s, early 2000s with like Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, bands like that. But I think they definitely fits it when it needs to. So, pretty much rambled on for almost 4 minutes, so let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is Adderall. And I really think it's a really good way to start off this album. Now, it pretty much takes it from the namesake and its calming and focus effects. And Corey Taylor pretty much shows his vocal range, not solely for his aggression, and the instrumentals also do that too, and pouring kind of like soft pianos, down-tempo kind of synths, and acoustic guitar. Alright, it's not exactly how you would expect like an opening track to a Slipknot album to be, considering how jarring each one has been. In actuality, it's a perfect way to open up the end so far, because it keeps the listener on their toes and pretty much makes you wonder what's going to come next. Then we move on to the next song, which is called The Dying Song, aka Time to Sing. Now, this song is one of the first singles released from the end so far, and it's the purest form of comfort. And this song honestly has grown on me a little bit from the first listen, and I can honestly hear like a lot. This song compares to like Stone Sour, but there's also kind of like enough of that Slipknot flavor that keeps itself from straying too far. Next song on the album is called the Chapeltown Rag, and this is actually the first single released from the end so far. And I first heard this, I was like, all right, this is actually really good. This is probably the best thing that they've done in like 15 years or so. It definitely has a little bit of like that volume 3 kind of flavor to it. Um, Next up is Yen. Now, this song is pretty much shows as a reminder that the Slipknot are still capable songwriters. Corey definitely steals the show with its kind of their vocals, cutting like the sugar-coated bullshit and depicting love in its rawest form. And I think the entire band also finds unity through soloing up to a punchy, emotional finale that we've yet to hear from them. Moving on to Hive Mind. Now, Hive Mind delivers with the guttural kind of like guitar sections accompanied by insane blast beats and sick keg hicks that we've come to expect. And also has a really great kind of like hardcore kind of like beat down a little part in there, which is interesting. Next up is Warranty. Now, this song also has some really great thunderous peaks that are mellowed out by a mix section, which sees the choir chiming for sort of like the sugar on top of it. Next song on the album is called Medicine for the Dead. Now, this song, kind of like the whole vibe I get from it, is very dreamy and has a bit of a haunting atmosphere throughout the beginning of it. And then it slows down the pace of the record with a stirring opening sequence that, I don't know, just really weird. And it's sort of like the slow experimental builds throughout seems a lot more conjoined in the interludes on We Are Not Your Kind. It shows very great innovation and progression at the same time. Next up is Acidic. Now, this song surprises listeners with a smooth kind of like bluesy kind of tinge crooning and sort of like vocoders in here. And the verses sway along with weightless guitar licks and impressive solos. And it's a great song from beginning to end with the best singing and guitar work that the band has done in years. In my opinion, it's another standout track that has skyrocketed to pretty much one of my favorites in their entire discography. Moving on to Heirloom. Now, Heirloom, in my opinion, it's kind of like the weakest his song on here. It pretty much retreads old ground and has not really memorable like guitar work. That's just me. Moving on to H377. Now, this song kind of like emotionally evokes I like regretful memories from like my teenage years, where I think a title like this would be badass. The track itself is a headbanger with some frenetic vocals that almost kind of like sounds something from like the first Slipknot album, and Corey delivers on all fronts. The drums pound right into your ears, and the guitar solo is nice and really great. Next up is Decade. Now, this song has an intro inspired by kind of like Iowa era Slipknot, and it sort of more, can't even speak, it sort of more into the melodic approach compared to like lesser parts on like 0.5 The Great Chapter. And the ending is really the only engaging part, but it takes too long to get there. Trimming some fat would have done it here. It also has like pretty much the weakest vocal delivery on the record, and the choruses are kind of very forgettable in my opinion. Then we close things out with Finale, appropriately titled. And this song kind of like experiments with some progressive influences similar to like the opening track, Adderall, and infusing Corey's cleans with some very orchestral strings, pianos, and Weird Hell's choir section makes it another highlight. And it definitely gets heavier than the opener, but both show longtime fans for something very unique. And I hope the band's kind of like explored these kind of like on like future albums and stuff. And it also has a very spacey outro, and it fades out with a melodic guitar backing sort of like a haunting choir. It's another interesting way to end this album. Now, overall, the end so far by Slipknot, it's a pretty good album. I think it's a little bit better than We Are Not Your Kind, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more. So if I were to give this album a score, I'm going to give the end so far by Slipknot probably a 7.5 out of 10, maybe an 8. So yeah, that's my review of the new Slipknot album, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about it, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.